So what is a bucket brigade delay? Well, first let's talk about what is a delay. A delay is basically anything that makes a sound take a while to get back to you. For example, hey, that's a delay. If you mix that back with the original, you get hey, hey. And we like that effect. It mimics what's been around since the dawn of time. If you stand next to a big mountain wall and shout, it's going to do that. If you're in a place that's like in a cave, it's going to bounce all over and that's going to be reverb, but that's an entirely different thing. Today we're just talking about delays. The first usable delays were made with tape. If you had a tape recorder, it had a record head and a playback head, and the playback head was in a different spot than the record head. So when a sound went in, if you listened to the playback head, there was a delay between hey, and when it comes out. So then you could take some of that and feed it back into the record head, and you could get that delay to play over and over and over again. And it was used very much in the early days of delays. But it's a very expensive and bulky way to get echo, and they wanted to do it in a pedal. And so someone very clever came up with what's called the bucket brigade delay. So let's define some of that. So a bucket brigade, it's when firemen didn't have fire engines, and they would get a bunch of volunteer people. First person would stand at the edge of the river, and the other person would stand at the edge of a fire, and they would put a bunch of people in between, all with buckets, and the first person would fill the bucket, dump it into the bucket of the person next to them. That person would then dump it in the bucket next to them, and that water theoretically would go all the way down with no loss. But we know there's going to be some loss because it's going to slop and spill. And at the end, that bucket that they first dipped in the beginning is now going to come out at the end where hopefully it's putting out the fire. So we're doing a similar thing with sound, except instead of buckets, we're using capacitors. It's an electronic device that will hold a charge and then let go of that charge. And so as a wave is coming in from a synthesizer, a microphone, it really doesn't matter where the wave is coming from, that wave is going into this bucket, and it fills the bucket up however much that wave was at that moment. And then the next bucket comes along and it fills up how much there is. And over thousands of buckets, you start getting the shape of the sound that went in, except now it's spread across all these different buckets, which are really capacitors. And then imagine a guy with a big drum hammering, and every time he hit the drum, you're supposed to take your bucket and dump it into the person next to you, so everybody stays controlled and we lose as little water as possible. That's what we call a clock. And it's exactly the same thing in a bucket brigade delay, in that every time the clock ticks, the bucket's dumped to the next one. And so that changes our delay time. And it was a great pedal, and we've used bucket brigades for years, and then digital pedals came out, which digitized the signal and played back the exact signal that it heard. And everybody loved that at first, but then over time, guitarists noticed that, man, that just sounds like I'm playing on tape, then taking a copy of the tape, moving a little bit, and playing it again. And in other words, the delays were too much like the original. And so all of a sudden, everybody went back to appreciating bucket brigades because the slop from dumping from bucket to bucket, and there's this thing called aliasing that happens because of the wave is a continuous thing and we're breaking it up into these buckets. There's some errors. And so we have to use filters to kind of disguise some of the noise that comes from the clock and other things. And the end result is that a bucket brigade, the echo doesn't sound exactly like what went into it. Instead, it's kind of a darker, fatter, puffier, bloomed version of it. And it turns out guitarists love it because they can have echo behind them, but you're never confused. What am I hearing that's the actual guitar, and what am I hearing is that's the delay? Now in the keyboard world, all the delays are useful. I personally like digital delays because I like bright, sprinkly delays. People who do analog synthesis often prefer analog delays because that's the sound that they like. There are many delay pedals that simulate bucket brigade, but also do digital and do various things. But one of the best parts about bucket brigade delays is that once those buckets are filled, you can now change the clock time so they're now dumping either faster or slower to the next bucket. And this is where we're changing time. In other words, temporarily, we can speed time up and we can slow time down. And when you do that with a bucket brigade delay, it does it in such a smooth way that it really feels like you've got your hand on the knob of time. And so to demonstrate an analog bucket brigade delay pedal, I'm using the MXR Carbon Copy Deluxe. And This is a great pedal, one, because it's true all analog. It has a nice long delay time, and it has extra features, including the ability to have an LFO speed up and slow down the time just enough to give it some chorusing and thickness. It also has a bright switch that kind of helps compensate for that darkness you get on a bucket brigade delay. And it also has tap tempo, so I can very quickly change the tempo to something else. So first, let's do a single echo. Okay, and I can make that delay be very short, even shorter. And you can make it so short that you can't even hear the difference between the two notes. And I can make it very long. And here's the longest this pedal does. But now I'm going to take that delayed signal and put some of it back into the top of the pedal so that that delay keeps repeating on itself. I'm going to turn the regeneration or feedback up some. And notice that each echo is getting darker and quieter, which is usually the desired feature. And at some point, if I keep turning the feedback up enough, it's going to go forever. Almost. And now that it's doing that, I could change the delay time because all the sound is in those buckets. As I speed up and slow down the dumping of the buckets by changing the clock, I can actually change the pitch. And there's a lot of digital delay pedals that can't do that. Because of the digital way that it's doing delay, it doesn't like to smoothly go from slow to fast like this. So it is definitely one of the features of Bucket Brigade, as well as the cool tonal things that it does. So now I'm going to add this extra feature from the carbon copy, which adds a slow LFO to slowly change the delay time up and down, which gives you a nice chorus. So we'll start here and get a nice sound. So now listen as I turn the width of the LFO up, and you'll start hearing more of that up and down pitch. It's a really beautiful feature, and it's doing that with the beauty of the Bucket Brigade. So a lot of features there, a lot of tricks you can do. The hint is the faster you turn the speed of that modulation, the less depth or width you want, because otherwise it starts getting very, what I call, seasick. Right? So maybe for a special effect, but man, you don't want to do that too often. And then, like I said before, I have tap tempo. So I can play a note, have a certain delay time, and now I can tap to a new time. Or really fast. Or really slow. And if I do that in real time, you're going to hear those weird pitch artifacts. Just something you can't do with the digital delay. It's one of the things that just makes a Bucket Brigade delay such a beautiful thing. If you have any further questions about Bucket Brigade delays or other pedals, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. Thank you very much for watching.